Hello fans, here I am on Hannibal TV. This is Gino Brito. You probably know me from way back in the 1980s as a wrestler, a promoter, and I salute all you wrestling fans. Thank you. Have a good day.
This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com with legendary wrestler and promoter Gino Brito, who is here at Jacques Rougeau's retirement show tonight to be an interviewer as well.
Yes, I will be interviewing the guys as they go into the ring, and I'm so glad to be here because I'll tell you, I'm going to meet some of the old-timers that might show up that I haven't seen in a long time, and it's always in your blood. Wrestling is always in your blood.
What do you think about the house that they're drawing here tonight, close to 12,000?
I think it's great. It's because except for certain organizations, this is the one, and Rougeau Jacques Jr. worked on it so hard. He and his wife, they put in time and energy into it, and it's paying off, and it's good. It's good for the morale even of the young wrestlers that are showing up here tonight.
Were you involved with the first show at Jerry Park many years ago that drew the 30,000 people crowd?
No, I was wrestling then. We wrestled here. The first time we had, it was called, we had the Italian Connection, Tony Parisi, Dino Bravo, Dominic DeNucci, and I against the Hollywood Blondes and the two Russians. That was the first time. We did 29,600 some odd paid admissions. It was good. And the second show was like 2 years later.
Do you have any memory of Bruno Sammartino you can share with us? He, of course, passed away recently.
Bruno, I mean, I was around Bruno, first of all, in New York on 3 different occasions for Vince McMahon Sr. Then I was in Japan with him. I worked in Pittsburgh when he had the office with Ace Freeman there. And we were friends. I visited him, he visited me. We had like a clique. And Elio Di Paolo in Buffalo, so we'd all be together. And worked out a lot with Bruno when I first started. Of course, I wasn't as strong as he was, but we had good workouts.
And Dino Bravo, you were very close with him, weren't you?
Well, Dino Bravo, I knew as a kid. I mean, he was like family. His sisters, mother, father, we all grew up on the same street. And I broke him in, and I started training him in 1970, and by the end of middle 72 already there, I tagged up with him, and then we started wrestling.
For those that only know him from WWE watching this, how popular was he in Quebec?
He was, I would say, from 1980 to 1987, he was the number one. He did very well. Before that, you had the Rojos, Jacques' father and an uncle. But during the 80s, he and Rick Martel, they were like the 2 top baby faces in the territory.
And were you involved when WWE kind of took over the Montreal territory in the business side of the dealings there?
Yeah, we did. I was, as a matter of fact. They came in near the end of 1985 because at one time when I was in the office, Andre the Giant was partners with me, with Frank Vawa. Excuse me, and then he had to leave. And Vince came in, and it wasn't a good experience for me, but I'll tell you, because my father had started that business, and I could see I was losing it because all the guys went. Even when Dino came to me and said, "What am I going to do?" I said, "For the money that he's going to make you, go." And they all went, and that's when I closed up the territory.
How close were you to Andre? Obviously, you were business partners with him. You must have knew him pretty well.
Well, I've been to his house. I've got a lot of home movies and pictures with Andre the Giant. And when he came to Montreal, at one time, even when he was traveling, I'd go on the road to check out the towns and all. I had got one of those vans with the bubble top and a big, so he'd be comfortable. And on the way back, he could drink his beer. And I was around Andre a lot too, of course.
What was the most you ever saw him consume in one sitting for alcohol?
Well, I'll tell you, I've never seen him when they tell me consumed. I wasn't there, but I can tell you this. One time, on a trip back from Chicoutimi, we had a case of beer, and he had about 26 ounces of Crown Royal and some Pernod. That's a French drink. And by the time we went through the park in Quebec City, he tapped me on the shoulder. He says, "We're empty." So we found a place, stopped, we got some more beer, and by the time we got to Montreal, we were empty again.
Is it sad for you at all now when you hear about places like Chicoutimi used to sell out all the time, Rimouski, and now there's hardly any wrestling in a lot of these towns?
There is hardly any wrestling, and it is sad because Chicoutimi, that area, Jonquière, Chicoutimi, believe me, and I've got the numbers even now to prove it. When you're drawing in a town of that size, and then an arena that sits 3,200 people, and you've got over 5,000 people, and the fire department want to close you down, it means that was a good town. And too bad now, like you say, it's no more.
And even Gatineau, which was called Hull back then, you would sell out there regularly.
We would come to every Thursday at the Gertin Arena, and we draw, maybe not sell out all the time, but a lot of times we did sell out. We even turned them away there, yes.
Was it Bruiser Brodie that wrestled for your company when he was wrestling in Quebec, or was it the opposition?
He wrestled for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you find
Brodie? I found him a hard worker, this and that, a little stubborn at times. We had to argue about a few things, but if I was still promoting and he was still there, I'd still use him, Billy.
And you mentioned your father, Jack Britton. For those that don't know about his promotion history and his history, could you tell us a little about him?
Well, my dad started in the business, believe it or not, in 1934 as a carnival wrestler. Worked his way up with my uncle that was also a wrestler. And he started the midgets right after the war, 1946, because I was just I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And I remember all the midgets that went through: Skylar Low, Beaver, Fuzzy Cupid, Pee Wee. Anyway, there's so many of them. And then he quit wrestling just to manage his midgets, and also he was in the office in Detroit, Michigan. That's where I started wrestling back in the end of '59.
So was he dealing with the Chic in the Chic's younger days?
Oh yeah, he dealt with the Chic in Detroit. They had like both of them would put on shows. They'd have one group against the other, stuff like that. In some towns like Lansing, Michigan, Saginaw, all these towns, and the Chic used a lot of. My dad's, and Bert Ruby was his partner then. Top wrestlers like Igor, then was the Garza, Ricky the Crusher Cortez, Lou Klein, Jim Adie, all these, and they'd work against Dick the Bruiser, the Chic, and all. It was all mixed up then.
And it was your dad that discovered Abdullah the Butcher, right?
Yeah, well, it was actually, I don't want to take credit for it, but I'll have to, it was I. We used to go to a gym at Vic Tanny's in Windsor, Ontario, and we had an old church basement where we had a gym there, and guys who were working out there, Jim Myers, which became the student, and then George Steele for the WWE. Well, they started, and I seen him there, and he was like with the police department. I always see cops around him and teaching karate and stuff. And how would you like to wrestle? We got a gym. I said, contact my dad. He did. And then my dad contacted him, and he started under the name down there of Zila Samara. He wasn't called Abdullah the Butcher. And he started also there in Detroit, and from there, that's when he started going to Calgary and all these territories. He ended up in Montreal, and then the rest pretty well all over, Japan mostly.
Did your dad drag you into the business, or were you interested in it all the time?
No, he never dragged me. As a matter of fact, he never... I've got a brother and everything that wasn't interested at all in the business, and but I grew up with it. I mean, I take me to the matches around Montreal. In those days, they had 4 or 5 places where they call it let's lutte, and all the light heavyweights and stuff. And he used to work on the cards, and I'd go and I got into it, and it just I started working out. I had a lot of wrestlers would come and take me to the gym, and even when I was a kid, and play with me and show me, and that's how I got started into wrestling.
How many towns were you guys running a night when Quebec Wrestling was at its most popular?
From 1981, let's say, start of 81 to 87, I went as far as Edmundston, New Brunswick, all the way to Thunder Bay, Ontario. Wow. There were some Saturday nights I had 3 rings. I had my guys, Jerry Patel, brother-in-law, and I remember one week where we ran 2 shows on Friday. We had one, and we said it's not going to work because it's Friday afternoon. People are still at work. We went anyway. We did a fair house, and we had one at night. We had 2 shows on Saturdays and 2 shows on Sundays.
Wow.
All the different group. One group in the east, the other one mostly around Montreal, the other one, like in those days we used to do all Gaspé and all that, the Maritimes, part of the Maritimes.
And you also traveled with the midgets too, so you were traveling around like crazy.
That's how I got started. My dad had the idea, he says, you want to be known in the business? He gave me 4 midgets, Fuzzy Cupid, Beaver, Sky, and in 1 year, I tell this to a lot of people, I had bought a new car, a 61 Dodge, and 17 months later, I had 142,000 miles on it.
Wow.
I had done all of Texas for the Funks. We would go to Arizona, then all the way to Rojos in California, then shoot up to Don Owens in Portland, Oregon. And I was on the road all the time. Those and my dad says they're gonna know you, and then and it was true. Pick up the phone, Terry Funk Jr. or somebody, or yeah, or his father, Terry Funk. Hey, come on in, yeah. So Tony Parisi and I, we hit Tennessee, which we did pretty well. Georgia, I went to Florida, all the territories, southern territories, the West.
Any particular memories of Dori or Terry in those days?
Well, Dori was a quiet one. He was, and Terry in those days I think was a little wild, but I used to like to watch. I used to like a guy that could wrestle also, and I understood the gimmicks and all that. I used to like Dori a lot. The way he wrestled. Well, as a matter of fact, they made him NWA champion for a while, and they were good wrestlers, and I enjoyed seeing him around. Some of the wrestlers of my day that I really appreciated, but I thought the guy was a genius as far as booking in those days and getting the territories up, was Buddy Rogers. I've seen him go into a territory one time in Ohio where they couldn't draw 400 people, and a month later there were around 5,000 people, and a month after that 10,000 people. So he knew what to do. And so did Johnny Valentine when he went to North Carolina. Took it from nothing, and there's always guys that and I used to try to watch, like everybody else. My dad said, watch the guys that draw it's a business, and you gotta watch the guys that draw the money. You're not gonna work like them, a different style, you're not the same as Buddy Rogers, but psychology, and it worked out pretty good for me, because Parisi and I, everywhere we went, we took the belts, and we did very well in Tennessee, Georgia, and all over.
And you had some matches under Vince McMahon Sr. too as well.
There too. I was with Tony again. I went under the name of Louis Cerdan because he didn't want another Italian there. And I could speak French, do the interviews in French.
Right.
So he gave me, Cerdan was a boxer, married to Edith Piaf, the singer. And I took that name, and Tony would talk Italian, I talk French, and we'd do the interviews, and we took the belts away from the Blackjacks. We dropped them to Kowalski and John Studd when we left the territory.
Blackjack Mulligan, he's always thought to be a real tough guy. Did you ever see him in action in any bar fights or anything?
No, I never seen him. To me, he never. I worked with him, and everything went fine all the time. I must have worked with him because we had the rematches here and there. Probably worked with him about 12, 15 times, and never no trouble. If he had bar fights after that, there were a couple of guys. I had one in my territory too, King Tonga.
Yeah.
He used to. And when I had the business, I mean, I wouldn't tolerate. I said, you guys are professionals. Try to behave like professionals.
Now, King Tonga, his stories have become legendary now. Do you have any examples of some amazing...
Yeah, I've got one time in Quebec City, the cops came in. They said, "Don't go out that door," because I think they were called the Caruso or something. Anyway, two brothers, supposedly street fighters, tough guys. So they got, because they said, take that door and everything. He said, "No, I'm going out that door." So by the time the cops, they start following him, by the time he got out there, one of them was laid out, the other one, he had half his teeth already out, broken out of his mouth. He just didn't care. I mean, another time, another guy came in and said, "Oh, yeah, you phony wrestlers, you fakers, this and that, boom, boom, boom." Yeah, he's going, yeah. And the guy pushed him, kind of. As soon as he touched him, that was a mistake. I've never seen a guy hit the floor so hard and not move. I don't know. He hit him, I think it was... First he hit him with a kick in the ribs, and the guy went like this, and as he did after that, with his open hand, I think he hit him under the nose, and the guy just collapsed there. That was it.
And I guess Mad Dog Vachon, he was in your territory a lot. He has a similar reputation.
Yeah, Mad Dog. I knew him when we used to go to the Palais National where we do amateur wrestling because he went to the British Empire games and all that. And his brother Paul, and I knew him. I was a kid. And in Montreal, he had the reputation in nightclubs as one of the tough guys. And when he went into wrestling after that, he knew that, you keep doing that, you might end up some 100-pound guy with one little bullet, and that'll be the end of you. Yeah. So he stopped that.
And Raymond Rougeau told us a story on one of your shows. I guess him and Zerinov Duboeuf ended up having a shoot fight.
It happened in St. George of Labos. What Zerinov Duboeuf had done, he had roughed up Arma, which was the younger brother than Raymond. And he was starting out in the business. Nice kid, but he roughed him up pretty good. So next day we had that show that Saturday in St. George de Beauce. And he said, "Can you do me a favor? Change the matches, put me in with Zerinov." And I said, I'll do it. I says, the guy, he's tough when he's fighting a kid that won't defend himself. And Raymond just... After that, we lost touch with Zerinov. Nobody ever seen him again. Wow. He took his clothes, never took a shower, just left, limping away.
Was that more common in those days? Sometimes shoots would happen in the ring.
Yeah, I've seen maybe in my lifetime, I'll say between 5 and 10. Most of the time, though, I've seen guys say tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock, like in Detroit, there at the gym at the Detroit Hotel. A guy wouldn't put a guy over or something, because in those days it was go down in the gym and see who's the best. I've seen a couple of good ones there.
And I was told to ask you about the infamous Billy Robinson versus Sailor White fight.
That was sad. Everybody said, "Oh, Billy Robinson took a beating." Yes, he did, a hell of a beating. But the guy went out there so drunk, right? And he never thought he was going out for a fight. He still had his glasses on. And he got him down and he beat him and kicked him. He had his head. I tell you, I had a friend of mine, Mike Moran, with ice packs because he didn't want to go to the hospital. So a couple of days later, there's a show in Quebec City and he wants to work. I said, "Billy," I says, "you're still all beat up." He says, "I want to go," because he was working with Sailor, right?
Yeah.
And Sailor he took off for Newfoundland. He didn't stay there. So I don't know what would have happened. I'm not saying because I don't know, but it wasn't right what he had done. And then I had a lot of trouble holding back because my Tony was there, Tony Parisi. Tony Parisi says, "Where is he?" He says, "I'm not drunk. Where is he?" I says, "You guys, this is it." I says, "You're not fighting as long as you're working for me." I says, "You're not going to be then we make the papers and everything goes wrong." So everything quieted down. Billy Robinson finally healed up, and then later on, Sailor came back.
Now, you also wrestled Lou Thesz in a couple of tag team matches, I think. What was it like being in a ring with such a legendary performer?
Oh, that was great. Lou Thesz and Pat OConnor. That was, I mean, the guy, first of all, you had to start off and do the wrestling, right? In those days, you had to make the move to go behind and a little bit stiff, right?
Yeah.
And as long as you did that, and then after that, you could get anything out of him. And of course, to wrestle Lou Thesz always made you a bit nervous. He had, but he was such a gentleman. And again, I can thank my father for that because he knew my father. My father knew him way before, and he used to say, "Hey kid, how's your?" I always got good matches with the few matches I had, not that many.
What was your favorite arena to wrestle in the Montreal territory?
Well, I love the Paul Sauvé, although it wasn't as big as the Forum. But it seemed the people there, they kind of, they were all into it. Like the ambiance was there, you know what I mean? And it was good. And if you talk, of course, wrestling in Madison Square Garden, because you start to think this is where Joe Louis boxed, this guy, Muhammad Ali and all the big names, and it was something, what an arena, known throughout the world. And you said, well, I think I've did pretty well in the business, wrestling in Madison Square Garden.
And I guess the biggest sellout you had at the Forum, probably overpacking it, was Dino Bravo against Masked Superstar Bill Eadie.
That was the biggest house, yes. And then that mixed, when I worked mixed promoters with Vince on one house, the Rojos against the Garvins, that really drew a lot of money too.
Was that feud kind of your booking idea, or did they have a say in it?
It was ours. It was still my guys, and Ronnie Garvin, which I let him pretty well. I said, you dictate a lot of the match, and him and Raymond got along good, and the match was people are still talking about it. Sometimes I meet people about that match there, and that one with Superstar and Bravo, it clicked big, and we could tell, when you're advanced, you've got to have the seats sold in the first week that you announce the show, and the show's only in 3 weeks. You're going to do pretty good.
Oh yeah, and you also used Hulk Hogan before he really blew up big. Any memories of him?
Yeah. He packed him and the Giant, as you know, right? Yeah. That was for us. He packed the Sauvé. So Hulk Hogan, well, some people, they don't like him, but you gotta admit, didn't lose money when you booked Hulk Hogan. You always made money.
Right. What would a typical week be like when you were in charge of the Montreal territory as far as in the office booking?
The summertime was hectic. I used to, I had sometimes Leo Burke help me out, Luigi Massera, Frank Valo when he was there. I had another guy that's a local guy, Tony Muley, which I also booked towns, all the BTB, all that, and get together. And some guys, and I used to take care of a lot of the booking with sometimes. And I ask guys, I wasn't afraid to ask people for advice. Sometimes, things you don't see that day, and then you make the decision. We do it or we don't do it. And but when you had, like some weeks, like I say, when you've got 13, 14 shows in that week, it's a headache. Booking all the guys, and especially double shows. You gotta make sure the guys, afternoon show, they gotta go, boom, the show at night. So but I had good people working for me.
And you mentioned you did some co-promotion with WWE. Also, you had a deal going with the AWA. Do you want to tell us about that deal?
Yeah, with Vern Gagne came down, and that's why we had a lot of like Ken Patera and all these guys come down, Billy Robinson, and we did pretty well with him. That was before Vince. Then Vince, as you know, came in, but I knew that with Vince it would be like a one-day deal, and because I knew that his idea was to take over everything, which he did.
And I heard a story that you went to Drummondville one month and it didn't go very well crowd-wise, and you came back with you and Bravo against the Road Warriors and you completely sold out. What was the idea? How did you end up turning it around like that?
Well, I gotta admit, it was I went in with was bad booking, and sometimes a few times I had the mistake of doing, you get too friendly with somebody and you say, well, I'll give them another shot. But myself, I was promoting, I was wrestling, and I knew that Dino as a single could draw more money than I did, and that's what you got to do if you're going to be in business, to make money. And you also have to please your fans. You gotta give them what they want and the best. And the Road Warriors against myself and Dino as a team, people bought it, and the place went. But I forgot the match I had in there before. But I was very disappointed, because I wasn't used to drawing 700 people.
Right.
And when you see that, you say, what the hell? What's happening?
Did you have anything to do with Rick Martel getting the AWA title for a while?
No, nothing at all. That was way before that Rick came into Montreal. That was strictly between him and Vern Gagne. Yeah.
What is your opinion on Martel? Obviously, he retired. He's one of the few that have actually permanently retired from wrestling.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, to me, he was here in Quebec anyway, he was a credit to the business, because when you got people appreciating, like he was a guy in good shape, first of all, and everything, and always he took a guy like big guy there I had worked, not Steele, what was his name? Remember at the end there?
Steve Strong.
Steve Strong. I took, and he'd get some matches out of that guy, and that I couldn't have got out of him, because the guy at first, let's face it, he was awkward, and a bit of a big head at times. But with Martel, I mean, that's why we kept putting Steve Strong against Martel, and it did some business to Soe especially.
And speaking of Steve Strong, I was told you had a bit of a shoot with him in one match after he took some liberties with your son, I guess.
Well, no, I did take liberties with my son, and I said, look, I says, I'm not gonna let it. My son was starting out then, right? And my son would was afraid to do a lot of things because he would ask me, should I do this or that, right? And I said, so I changed a match. I said, I'm going to work with you. And I told him, I said, first bad move you make, I said, you better go all out. You know, because I says, that's going to be the end of you. And things kind of went pretty good. I didn't have to do much. We just worked.
And you have a pretty good relationship with Pat Patterson, I guess, to this day. Yeah, could you talk about... As a
matter of fact, we went downtown the other day. He's got an apartment in Montreal. I went down there. He invited me for lunch. I see him. He loves to golf a lot. So when he comes to Montreal, he goes between Florida and Montreal. So we get together and, you know, for a lunch, talk a bit, and he gives me a few scoops because now I don't hear too many of them, and I still like it. I like the business.
Right. What happened with your relationship with WWE? Because you were promoting with them for a while, and then it seemed like everything fell apart.
You know, it kind of fell apart. It did, and at first, let me tell you, I wasn't too happy with Vince Jr. First of all, it made me do a bad decision not to close up before I should have closed up, which made me lose a lot of money. And, you know, because I figured, you know, he's doing it to Vern Gagne, doing it to me, doing it to... so then after that, it's Pat said, oh, come on. He says, you can, you know, you're known in Montreal as a promoter, you got the license, this and that. And it went for a while, and after that, of course, I don't blame him. He said he could get somebody to do it cheaper. So I said, go ahead. Because I really didn't have my heart in it that much, no.
So after that, I guess you worked with some local promotions and kind of got out of the wrestling business.
I did that, and I'll tell you, I just did that like a hobby for fun. Like in the hall. I'd go there, and I'd have fun, you know. And... watching like the guy, the kid there,
Kevin
Owens, he was starting out then, and I'm going way back, and I used to watch. I said, that kid, I says, got good timing, you know, for a guy, you know, not just to wear. And I said, he's gonna go someplace. I was glad to see that he did, and I used to like that. Give a bit of advice to you know, a guy, no matter what, you don't have to be big like you, but look a bit like a wrestler. And I tell guys, work out a bit. Get, you know, these 12-inch arms is to me in the business. I don't like that.
Right, because there are still some big guys, but overall wrestlers look a lot different than they used to.
Oh, yeah, you know, there's some now, but people used to look at a big guy, like you'll walk into the ring, they'll say, hey, I wouldn't tackle with him, you know. But if you see some guys, unless you're in that weight division like boxing, that's it. But I hate to see a guy with 13-inch arms wrestling with a guy with that's built like you or like The Rock, let's say, you know. I mean, to me, I was still from the old school where I like to see a wrestler look like a wrestler.
And you were a babyface everywhere you went in your career other than Buffalo. Why was that? Buffalo,
New York. There are too many baby faces there, and I thought, well, I didn't think Pedro Martinez did. Okay. He says, so he says he put me in the first time with Ricky Starr, and I liked it, and I said I'll keep doing it. And while I was there, you know, wrestled as a heel, and a bit when I went. Even when I was in Tennessee, after I went back, and some of these towns in Alabama, when they, you know, Buddy Fuller places, and I would wrestle heel a bit there too, because heel, I think, it calls the match a lot more sometimes than the baby face. Yeah. I used to like it, but I guess I was a babyface all my life.
Do you have any memories of Frenchy Martin, who passed away recently?
The clown. Frenchy Martin, I tell you, as a matter of fact, it's funny. Last week I met somebody, we talked about Frenchy Martin there were things he used to do. He was a funny man. And and he knew his place in the ring. He used to tell me, don't put me there, put me underneath a match, because wrestling to him was just a way to make a living. But outside the ring, and the Giant loved that guy. He'd make the Giant laugh so much, Like after the matches a few times, the Giant used to live at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel here in Montreal, and there was a bar downstairs, and when the Giant was there, it didn't close up. And he used to say, Frenchy Martin, là, il est dans le bout, là. Yeah, he'd come down. We had a lot of fun with him on the road, too.
And what's your favorite memory of the Rougeos? Obviously, it's Jacques' retirement here tonight. You've had a lot of contact with him throughout the years.
Yeah. Jacques is quite a bit younger than I am, right? He could be my son. But I really, really liked, and even to this day, I'm very good friend with his father. I was a lot much closer to his father, Jacques, than I was with Johnny, even when I worked for Johnny there back in the 60s. But I thought he was a good businessman. Johnny he did a lot of things besides wrestling. But I like, and Raymond. I really liked Raymond, very professional. Didn't take advantage of the name Rougeau. He worked hard, and he made his way. But Jacques, like I said, and Armand, I wouldn't travel with them, or never wrestle against or with them. So it was another generation. He was more the generation of my son.
Now, this is Jacques' third retirement match. Do you think the third time's going to be the charm?
I hope it is now. I hope it is. After this, he's finishing up with, I think, a success tonight. He's going to have success. I hope that he really calls it quits. First of all, he's got ideas of going to the Festival just pour rire there. He wants to be a comedian. And maybe that's a second career for him, because when you announce it after a while, you got to be credible.
And what do you think of Cedric? I've seen all the Sons, and I've been pretty impressed with Cedric's potential. Do you think he should keep at wrestling? Or?
If I was Cedric, I would try to find a way. I'm not saying that I would succeed, but he's got all the potential. He's a good wrestler, and a big guy, everything. He's got a head on his shoulders. But it's his decision. But if it was me, believe me, at his size, I would keep trying.
And he has the Rougeau name, of course.
And he has the Rougeau name.
Yeah. Now, Roy Shire, you worked for him. He's always thought of to be a genius booker. Did you pick up anything from him?
Yeah, I picked up a lot from a guy like him, and the way he handled Ray Stevens, I thought was very, he put Ray Stevens where Stevens could shine in the ring, with guys he could shine. Of course, sometimes he had to, if a guy got over, even if it wasn't Stevens' greatest match, but if it drew, but most of the time. And I liked his way. And strict guy, a lot of people didn't like him. They found him obnoxious and stuff. I never had no.
Was Billy Graham ever in that territory when you were there?
No, not in my day.
And you also said you worked in Florida, where Eddie Graham, another guy that's thought of as a booking genius.
I worked for Eddie Graham, and there was another guy that he did it, and sometimes I like Tom Ernesto and guys like that, which I didn't think were, I think they were past their prime and all that as wrestlers, and the way he'd work it around it with in those days Sam Steamboat he had, and all these guys. And his territory, Florida, for a long time was a good territory. The only thing I would have had against Eddie Graham, that he didn't look like a babyface. He should have stayed heel. He worked a babyface. But he was a promoter and he wanted to put himself there. But maybe if it was somebody else, he could have even done a bit better.
Now, you don't have to go into too much detail on this, but one thing we've talked to a lot of the Quebec wrestling legends about is Dino Bravo's unfortunate passing. I know you were close with him, so you don't have to go into too much, but any thoughts on that very unfortunate situation?
Well, first of all, 2 days before that happened, he had a gym in his house. So he told me, come on down, we're going to work out. So I went to work out with him. And he went into, you see what happened? He went from my territory to work for Vince, right? So he made some money. Buys a house, which the house even in those days cost about $700,000. And then, well, he was thinking about that Mercedes. He had that big 98 holes besides. I says, you make $1 million. If you spend $1 million, you're broke, Dino. Well, he said, yeah, but I knew that with Vince, after a while, sure enough, the second year he did and then after that Vince told him, that was it for him. And where does he go from there? And Dino was always a nervous guy, always. And he went into an easy business, which wasn't too legal. And what happened. And that's it.
And you've known Quebecer Pierre Carl Oulette, PCO, a lot over the years. What do you think about his recent success? He's become popular again at 50.
Yeah, at 50 years old. As a matter of fact, we did a TV program together where you sit around a table eating and you talk about wrestling and stuff. That's the last time I see him. And like even with Jocks, I think it was a good team, him and Jocks. He could do that thing off the rope for his size, big guy, looks the part. And I'm glad that he's doing very well today, because the last time I had seen him, he wasn't into he had a gym or something or working.
Yeah, he went for about 9 years of not wrestling, and he wasn't sure if he was ever going to come back.
Now the only thing that I don't know how long it's going to last, because you get to a certain age, sometimes it gets a little harder. Although, of course, if you keep in shape, he could go maybe a couple of years.
And do you have any promotional advice for any promoters watching this? I know it's a different business now, but just general booking or promotional advice because you were so successful?
Well, yeah, I would. The first thing a promoter should look, especially if he's been into wrestling, should look at his wrestlers and, tell him if he's got faults. You tell him. You tell him, the guy, like me, I cannot stand somebody that thinks he's getting heat just by turning around and calling the women sluts and spitting on them. I mean, that might work with a couple of people, but and as a promoter, I did that a few times with some. I'm not gonna name them. With some of the guys, you keep doing that, you're out of here. I says, your work is in the ring. I don't care what you do with the wrestler on the interview. Knock the wrestler, but don't start. If you start just knocking the people and stuff, you're gonna do what for? But you're not gonna draw the big crowds doing that. And I would tell the promoter, watch your matches. If you don't like something, you tell the guy. I had a couple of guys that were wrestling. The guy was about your size. And then he threw a punch. I got so mad. I ran to the ring. I couldn't stand it. People go, yeah. Well, people, I don't care what they know and what wrestling is. They still want to see two guys at least look the part, play the part. And that's and a wrestler that's been a promoter that's been a wrestler, I think that's a bit of an advantage because you can tell what's going on.
Right. And as far as promotional secrets, did you have any? Did you buy a lot of advertising, or did you try and just create good angles that people wanted to come and pay to see?
The number one thing TV. You need TV, right? If you're gonna go big, and your angle, you can see it if it sells. I would not go and spend in the Journal de Montréal $5,600 like I did once. If I know my TV is selling it, I'm gonna have a sellout or close to it. So your publicity, you gotta watch it, and newspapers are good, but there's a limit to them, you know. Once the people know the card, they read the card, they know the next day they don't have to read it again. If they're gonna go, they're gonna go. Your angle, your TV, your wrestlers, that's what's gonna bring them in. If your angle is good, then people want to buy it.
And what are you up to these days? I guess you're probably retired.
Oh, I'm retired. I've been retired the last things I did was with my brother-in-law in the car. He's got car franchises. My son is in there too right now. I haven't been doing anything except bicycling and losing weight.
Yeah, you're actually, I was going to say, you're in better shape than the last time I saw you, which would have been a few years ago.
I dropped at my height. I'm not that tall. I started, I was 244. Now I'm 185 and I stay there all the time. And I bicycle a lot. In the summer, I try to bicycle at least 200 kilometers a week. And no more weights, no more, but push-ups, few dips. That's enough for me.
And if any fans or any promoters or anyone wants to contact you, do you have any way that they can reach you that you wanted to?
Well, yeah, but you know, right now, business has changed some, and I haven't kept up to it like I probably should have. And of course, I'm going to be 78 years old. So, you know, I'm passé, like they say, so I'm not going to give too much advice anymore,
right?
You know, unless they ask me.
And finally, I know this is going to get started soon. Do you have any message you want to say to your fans out there?
Well, the fans, first of all, I want to thank the fans, especially for the great years that we had. Even to this day, I meet some people that are my age or close to me, and they said that they had enjoyed the Monday nights at the Pulso and all that. And they'll always be wrestling fans. If you give them good entertainment, it's like a good movie, they'll keep going. When TV came out, they said movies would die. It didn't. Wrestling will never die, but you have to give them what they want, and they'll keep on going. And we have to thank the fans because they're the ones that put the bread on the table for the wrestlers.
Good. We'll close it at that.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.